Welcome back to Toronto Real Estate by the Numbers for November 2022. My name is Gabriele Battista from Homes and Reality, helping you break down all the Toronto real estate numbers, keeping you educated in the market until you're ready to make that first big move. I'm a local real estate agent in Toronto, Ontario, and my goal with these videos and all the other content I do is to really help first-time buyers in the Toronto real estate market. It can be a very scary market because it's so expensive, but I want to be support, and the main goal is to educate people and keep people informed of what's going on in the Toronto real estate market while their everyday life goes around. And if I can give weekly or monthly content to just help you keep in touch and maybe what trends are going on in the Toronto real estate market to keep you informed until you're really ready to make that first big move, I'm doing my job correctly. So I'm really excited to keep doing these. And if you're watching either on YouTube or Instagram, give me a like, give me a subscribe. Let me know what questions or comments you want to see more in the future. I'm happy to keep helping out first-time buyers in this busy Toronto market. Now back to the info. We'll start with our average selling prices of homes in Toronto for November. For detached homes, you're at $1.560 million. For semis, you're at $1.187 million. For townhouses, you're at $856,000. And for condos, your average selling price is $734,000. Let's look into how that compares to last year. As real estate is very seasonal, we want to look at how prices were this time last year compared to now. For detached homes, you're down 13.7%. For semis, you're down 17.1%. For townhouses, you're up 0.6%, while condos, you're down 1.5%. And before we go into a little bit of analysis, we'll go over month first. For detached homes, you're down 3%. For semis, you're down 2.69%. Townhouses, you're down 0.76%. And for condos, you're down 0.75%. And this is from October of this year to November of this year for Toronto average stats. And the big thing you want to look into when it comes to the year-over-year numbers is around November, December is when really last year real estate really took off at the end of the year. You saw, properties really went into multiples, even during a slow time, which typically is like a Christmas time period. Properties were selling really hot very quickly, and prices really skyrocketed. And in the slower real estate market right now, you're going to start seeing these year-over-year numbers really get inflated, and they're going to be much bigger than they were in the past few years. Probably all the way up to March, you'll see some really big year-over-year changes. That's something to really consider. And when it comes to month-over-month, we are definitely having a slower Christmas time real estate market. Detached and semis are definitely down a little bit more than the average property. Condos and townhouses, they will fluctuate. Overall, it's been fairly steady over the past few months. They will fluctuate, 1% or so, but it's more the detached and semis are a little bit, they pop out at down 3% and down 2.69% from last month, not last year, from last month. And the one other big thing I really want to note is when it comes to year-over-year Toronto numbers, you're looking at your detached and semis, you're down 13 and 17% year-over-year, versus your condos and your townhouses are townhouses are up 0.6% year over year, which is a very shocking number considering the fact of the market that we're in. And then condos are down 1.5%. So very, very small numbers if you, instead of looking at, let's say, your detached and your semis. And then the really will show you what's been mostly affected throughout the last 12 months has been your freehold properties that have been getting the most attention there. That's one thing that's really important to note out, maybe seeing where the market shift has been most affected there. So now we'll get into the active listings and the new listings comparing year over year. And it's very important because when it comes to real estate being very seasonal, people tend to put their properties in the market at a certain time of year. And November tends to be a bit of a slower time. So look, new listings over this year and last year, we're down 16.2%. And I think in the past, we typically been in that 10%. And I think last month was 20%, which was a much bigger number. So we're in that middle point where less new listings are coming to the market, which has been the trend of the year. Less people are willing to put the house on the market, and they're not as motivated to sell with lower prices. What's more revealing is the active listings going up. With 16% lower new listings going to the market, there's 47.6% more active listings in the market. So that means is more properties are staying in the market, sitting in the market, and they're not selling. And that's very revealing because in the past, I believe we're typically at that 25% number year over year, how that's changed. And the fact that we have such a big number increased on active listings, it kind of shows maybe that extra little bit that's staying in the market and sitting in the market. And it may, maybe it's not a prediction, but I'd be curious to see if this number stays really high going into March. because properties are just sitting, not selling, because there really isn't a motivated party on either end. But it's definitely showing us that more supply is staying in the market, not selling, which is definitely concerning for sellers out there. We'll use this graph here as a quick example of active listings looking at this year versus last year. Towards the end of the year, active listings really take a big dip down. You'll see the blue line over here is for 2021. Close to December, a lot of listings just fell off and properties were sold very quickly. So there really wasn't a ton of real estate on the market. Now you're seeing these active listings kind of staying high. You're seeing a very slight decline, but not even close to the kind of severity as it was in last year. I'd be curious where that December number is and see if it stays high or if it takes another dip going down. And the last big number we always look at is your solds. What's been very consistent throughout 2022 is the percent change. It's usually around that 50% marker, and it's consistently stayed at that point, including in November. We're down 50% from this time last year to this year in the amount of sales, and that kind of just shows with the last number, with the fact that we're getting more active inventory in the market and sales are still down, that's showing that there just really isn't a ton of demand out there right now. And you'll look, it's been throughout the year. I'll put a graph over here to show that it's consistently been a much slower year in real estate compared to last year. So I'll kind of give you my raw, unfiltered thoughts when it comes to looking at all these numbers. And there's a lot of ways I can kind of go with this type of stuff. But what's the most interesting to me and stands out the most to me is your active listings versus your solds. The one story that I'm kind of finding now is there really isn't a ton of inventory. I've talked about that in the past with other videos. There hasn't been a ton of great inventory on the market now, but seeing the active inventory kind of climb up is showing that the current inventory in the market really isn't selling. It's sitting there and it's really not moving. So that's what I'm finding there. And that, with the added combination of conversations I've had with clientele and other people in the real estate market, is I'd be very curious how this comes into March, because a lot of people are kind of staying put. You see, again, new listings are down as usual. With new listings being down, a lot of people holding their properties and maybe selling the spring market. I'd be very curious how all of this, active listings sitting in the market until the spring market, see if that changes anything. If everyone thinks that their property is going to sell for more in the spring market, you're going to see a lot or an influx of new listings coming in the market in March or even in February. And with people really not buying, the buying activity not there, I'm very curious how that affects the market, if buyers will come back and kind of see much better inventory on the market and really get back into the buying mood. Or if it's going to kind of add to the problem we're having now, where there's no buyers, but there's going to be a ton of sellers. That with, being said, also with the most recent interest rate hike, these interest rates are probably going to stay for the next or for the foreseeable future. And with a higher interest rate environment, are people going to be motivated to sell their property? Are people going to be motivated to buy? So I think that's the most interesting thing. And I think this is the most important trend I'm looking at, to seeing where this active inventory stays in the market heading into, let's say, a spring market, if it's going to be a normal spring market or not. The other thing I'm really curious about seeing is, like I said earlier in the video, November is beginning of last year is when we really started seeing prices inflate. And we're going to see some very scary year-over-year numbers in the next few months. I'm curious and see how that changes and what happens with those property types. Seeing if we get to minus 20%, minus 30%. I don't know, but I'm going to be tracking those numbers really well. And while we're talking about that, it's been very shocking and very impressive on how condos and townhouses have been this resilient throughout the year-over-year numbers and even the month-over-month numbers with the slower real estate market. I expect them to be obviously negative year-over-year in the next few months, as we saw, condo price and townhouse prices really shot up. But more importantly, I'm really curious to see how they compare maybe month-over-month in the next few months for condos and townhouses, because they've been really shockingly very resilient. But that's also very curious to me. So my last thoughts in terms of, for the first time buyer perspective, what should you guys be looking at if you're thinking of buying in 2023? I think I'm going to do a separate video just on things to consider if you're buying in 2023. But my overarching thoughts right now, I think, is you really want to track on how quickly properties are selling in the next few months, especially in the December, January, February, March months. If properties are going back to selling fairly quickly, it may be something where we have a little bit more of a rebound in the spring market. But if properties are, if active listings keep coming up and there's a ton of supply out there, it could be a situation, if you are buying for yourself, it's something to consider. Explore those costs, see if it makes sense for you to get into the market, because these have been the best prices we've seen in a long time. And it's showing that there's going to be a much more stable market in the future. But I do want to first see what goes on in March, in February, if we get a big jump in supply and if that changed anything for the real estate market. But I think it's very important to look at these numbers to make a good decision and see whether or not it makes sense for you guys to buy in the new year. But no matter what, I definitely think it's something we should be paying attention to if you think you're 12 months to 24 months away from making that first big purchase. And lastly, for sellers, sellers have a place in this market too. And I'm talking to a bunch of them right now, how the market changes. And what seems to be the most important thing with active listings jumping up and new listings going down right now is price is the most important thing at this point. You cannot price with a comparable 4 months ago because that 4 months ago is no longer relevant. You want to make sure that you're pricing properties properly and you're showing properties well, because if sales are down 50% and inventory is up 40%, at that point, we need to make sure that your property stands out, because if it doesn't stand out to the top 10% of buyers or top 10% of properties out there, no buyers are going to look at it. And even if it's a great property, you may not even get buyers to come through because there's such little activity out there. So you need to make your property attractive by price. You need to make it look great. You really need to stand out if it's a property you have to sell right now. You have to be competitive in this type of market. I hope this is all helpful. Again, I do this every single month, breaking down just my unfiltered thoughts about the real estate market. I try to use numbers and graphs to support what I'm looking at, because I think it's very useful, because no one has a crystal ball to see where real estate prices will go, but I do think trends are the most important thing when making those decisions. So if I can present those, I'm happy to do so. If you have any questions about the Toronto real estate market, again, I'm a real estate agent in the Toronto area. I work with a ton of first-time buyers, not limited to them, but I'm really passionate about that group of people and helping them get into the real estate market. So I sit down with people every single week talking about their situation. If it's either, purchasing their first home, purchasing their second home, getting into the rental market, I'm happy to break down that information for you. So feel free to, touch base. You have my information here. And if you want more of this content, subscribe, give me a like. I'm going to keep doing this whether people subscribe or not, but if you want to be first in hearing what I have to say, I'm happy to be a resource to you. Anyways, Gabriele Battista, Homes into Reality. Thank you for watching. Talk soon as always. Bye.